lines too, so you can pretty much speak fluently. Because there are some that are on the continuum. Right, there are your random and passerbys and within and out of the systems and different levels of accessibility depending. Yeah, so with that in mind, that helps to bring understanding to some who may be having those questions. And as you can see, it would be very exhausting, useless, and even detrimental to a lot of the cases where some of the worst abuse is happening to entertain to a lot of those things or questions. When you have a lot of people around you who are unaware and entertaining to those things, and they don't want to listen to you, that's for sure. Well, they want to teach us a lesson, so it's been very difficult. I don't really like to think of the abuse that my son has been going through. My daughter or my son, I emphasize my son because we all know in these situations what's going on, and the boys usually do get it a lot worse with some of those things. These are very well-known things. It's very scary and it's sad to us. It's not really things you like to trouble the public or people with. Right? People are busy, they're working. You want people in good spirits and happy. I mean, customer service, right? Oh my goodness. Let's see. Page 188, 87. I know, see, I try not to get too emotional or sad. Sometimes I feel as though he almost responds to it sometimes. Just intrinsically. Even if he doesn't hear me, I'm speaking quietly, or could be day to day, you know. I mean, right, when you look at a lot of the coincidences in the history with others, yeah, and the symptomatic things, it's frightening. And that's part of the, hopefully people are seeing how a lot of these things and people get away with it in broad daylight and we can't do anything about it. It's sad, it's gut-wrenching. So we try to keep our minds in that altar realm a little bit, but still stay in the world, so to speak. Have a wherewithal as to life, I guess. God, life itself. Yes, something like that. How about page 184, the emotional phenomena in man. Cheers. Having some water. Yes, I know. I wish I could. The modern books on the emotional phenomenon in man, page 184. This is Human Psychology in the Manual of Neo-Scholastic Philosophy by Bishop. It's one of our favorites. Really is. It's a great book. 1929. The emotional phenomena in man. In modern books on philosophy, much is said of a third distinct function in man, the emotional, as it is assumed that the distinctive human elements are based upon a threefold faculty, that of knowledge, appetition, and feeling. Oh, good. Thank you for asking. Yeah, in reference to that, I was speaking more, along those lines, almost you're in a mind space maybe, or speaking about certain things too much and it upsets others, and then other people pay for it or something. Yeah, exactly. It's horrible, especially in some of the situations where you have really young children being tortured and abused, and they're making child and animal pornography with foreign hoax channels and killing and targeting innocent people. and you have the Luigi lovers and Hitlers turning their heads to it for other reasons. Really good people too, which is sad, and you can see that over the years. Yeah, it's very, 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 very sad. Frustrating on so many levels. It can spin you into, oh, it's best just to kind of grasp a hold of it, maybe. Now, acceptance. Spread the awareness, clarity, understanding the best we can. Yeah, again, we're here to help too. Any of those programs, for sure. That would be awesome. We'd love to. Acknowledge appetition and feeling. With Aristotle and the scholastics, we believe that this is a mistake. What we said in a former chapter is has applicable to man as it is to the animal. Every conscious function is accompanied by a certain tone of feeling, a passive affection of the conscious agent, expressive of pleasure or displeasure, of comfort or discomfort, and so forth. The differentiation in kind and degree is dependent upon the kind and relative perfection of the conscious action on one hand, and on the other, upon the innate emotional dispositions. The emotions of joy born of the acquisition of knowledge are distinctively human inasmuch as they are related to the perception of beauty, which implies an object which is at the same time rich and complex, and yet of a relatively facile and quick perception, on an account of a striking unity harmonizing the manifold elements. These we call the aesthetic emotions or sentiments. They are distinctively human because they are based upon the power of abstraction, the knowledge of order or unity and multiplicity. They presuppose a certain degree of education in abstractive perception in order to arrive at the knowledge of an important matter quickly and with a certain faculty. Also, the emotions which accompany volitional functions, and which, generally speaking, are much more intense and are found in all men, are distinctively human and not animal. When the aim striven for and achieved is an abstract nature, thus, while emotions are not the function of a specific third power in man, they are an essential concomitant of the other human functions. They are an integral part of human nature and of paramount practical importance. To man's knowledge they give light and color, to his actions power and success, and to his character sweetness and fullness. They are to man what color and fragrance are to the flower. Part 1. The nature of man. Having described and analyzed human functions, it is now our task to determine their nature as far as it is manifested by the functions themselves. Once we have determined the nature of the functions, it should be easy to arrive at a knowledge of the nature of the agent that performs them. Part A. The supernatural character of human functions. The distinctive functions, as we have seen, are of two kinds, the intellectual and the volitional. We shall study each kind separately, analyzing them carefully, or rather determining the result of the analysis we make of them in the preceding chapters. We shall find that the supermaterial or spiritual character will appear quite evident in the intellectual and volitional functions, as it will be confirmed by a comparison of these human functions with the purely animal. Section 1. The spirituality of mind functions. We will first consider the nature of the intellectual functions. One of them we have studied with some care: abstraction. There are others which we did not analyze, the acts of reflecting, judging, reasoning. For our purpose that is not necessary, because the general object of all intellectual functions is the same: to find out and explain what a thing is, to know its constitutive, efficient, and final causes. All this implies abstraction. There may be a difference in degree, but the kind never varies. It is the perception of the abstract, but what is the abstract? And its very name indicates it is a material object shorn of the conditions and determinations of its material existence, which is as much as saying it is the subject, it is the object, inasmuch as it is immaterialized. Abstraction is the process which accomplishes this immaterialization of a material object. Evidently, such a function and the power in man which makes such a function possible are of a supernatural character. Looking upon the abstract from another viewpoint, we come to the same conclusion. Surely, to perceive the abstract is to perceive an object which is not concrete. Since abstract and concrete are contradictory terms, it is evident that only the concrete and not the abstract is accessible to the material senses, and therefore not the abstract but the concrete alone can be seized by sense organs. Is accessible to the material senses, and therefore not the abstract but the concrete alone can be seized by sense organs. Hence, abstractive knowledge cannot be function of a sense organ. It cannot be a material function at all, but must be in its very nature supermaterial or spiritual. The conclusion is confirmed by an analysis of the act of reflection. When we speak of reflection, we refer to two distinct acts of the mind. We reflect from reflectere, to turn back. We reflect from reflectere, to turn back, when we turn our mind back upon an object already known in order to know it better. Double take. Reflection in this sense is the ordinary means to increase our knowledge of things. Again, we reflect when we turn our mind back upon ourselves, as when we think our own thoughts and reflect upon our own reflections. This is reflection in the strict sense, in which we take it here. Such a turning back upon oneself, where the subject becomes also the object of the same act, is absolutely impossible in a material action, which is by its very nature transitive, i.e., is either one body acting upon another body, or one part of a body upon another part. Here we must bear in mind what we said about immanence in respect to the nature of vital functions. Those functions are plainly material, and yet we called them immanent, and so they are in a very proper and legitimate sense. Cause and effect of the functions are in one and the same being. The same being assimilates and is benefited by the assimilation. Such is immanence in a broad sense, but here we take it in a strict sense, while the function of nutrition in its totality is immanent. Each part action of it is plainly transitive, because each part of it is accomplished successively, and another part an organ of the body. Not so the action of reflection. Here it is the thought thinking itself, and reflection reflecting itself. You cannot divide a thought or a reflection into parts and then assert that one part of it thinks of the other. Such a division is clearly impossible, and consequently such an assertion would be absurd. Besides, such a reflection would no longer be a reflection. Hence, reflection being strictly immanent and strict immanence being impossible in a material substance, i.e., a substance constituted by quantitative parts. The fact of reflection in man proves beyond question the supermateriality of the mind. By the power of reflection, by which man is able to take himself for the object of his knowledge, the fact of self-consciousness is explained. Animals, too, are conscious. Indeed, all specifically animal acts are conscious acts, but they are not self-conscious, which implies an act of strict immanence, and thus the ability of self-consciousness in man is another evidence of a spiritual function of knowledge in man. Part 2. The spirituality of will functions. We proceed to examine the nature of the volitional functions. According to our analysis of volitional functions, their proper and specific element is a free decision, of which is born a series of actions which are the means selected for the attainment of a definite aim, i.e., it is a free theological decision. Theological determinations and selections we have met with before we came to study man. We met them first in inorganic bodies, where they are expressed especially by chemical affinity. In plants, we did chemical affinity. That was interesting, yeah? Yes, that was very cool. Chemical affinity, AFFINITY. In plants, we notice them much more clearly because the great complexity of the constitutive and functional elements demands an enormous selective and determinative power in order to ensure the life and well-being of the organism. A new and striking element is observed in the theological determinations and selections of animals. They are based upon consciousness, and consequently they are spontaneous and therefore superphysical and superchemical. However, they are still material, ruled by the iron law of causal independence, i.e., by determinism, in consequence of which an action is conditioned by the one that precedes it and conditions the one that follows. Only in man this law of determinism that rules the interaction of all things material ceases to act in the same absolute sense. In him the theological determinations and selections are free decisions which have no efficient anti-selections, which have no efficient antecedent, but only an aim in the mind which shows their way and illumines their goal, Am I saying that right? Illuminize. ILLUMINES. And illuminize their goal. As we have amply shown in the preceding chapter, if such is the case, i.e., if human volitions are not subject to the laws of matter, evidently they must be of a supermaterial or spiritual nature. Here again, we have a plain confirmation of the supermaterial nature of the will functions in the fact that also the will is capable of reflection. We can take and often do take our own volitions as the aim of our volitions, i.e., we can decide on a matter, and often do, for no other reason than to come to a decision. But has explained such an identification of subject and object in the same act is unthinkable in a mere material agent because it is strictly immanent. Thus, it happens that in the same way as the mind is able to reflect upon itself, taking itself as an object distinct from any other, and thereby becomes self-conscious, and also the will is able not only to direct the mind and determine the whole animal organism, but to determine and direct itself, and thereby it becomes self-determinative and self-directive. This evident capacity for self-determination and self-direction is another plain evidence of the spirituality of the will. Ooh, the next section is great. I gotta take a break from reading. Part 3, comparison between sense and mind functions. Yeah, that one's fun. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, it's kind of a rainy day. It's a dreary rain. It's more of a drizzle now. It was dreary this morning and now it's a drizzle. Yes, it usually goes that way. Downpour, dreary, drizzle. Sure. Much love, health, and peace all. As always, yes, thank you.